Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, Cesar Espino, and today I have a special guest. His name is Nathan Yeung. Hey, Nathan, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Cesar. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, no, definitely. Why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about your background? Tell me more about you. What is it that you do right now?
So I run a firm called Find Your Audience, which is actually not really an agency. It's really a business built around scaling up a fractional CMO business. So essentially, I was getting kind of frustrated being a fractional CMO because I didn't really see kind of my work being put into action. So my whole thought process was, if I'm going to be a fractional CMO, I want to have a team to help me execute on the actual strategies that I recommend to my clients.
Got it. Okay. No, that's good. Well, that's definitely good. I definitely want to dive into that. Before we get into all of that and how you get involved with all of that, tell me about your upbringing and where you're originally from.
Yeah, so I have a bit of a weird background, so not very conventional in any way. So I studied in marketing. That was what I came out of school with. But I was actually a VP of finance at the age of 21, and I was actually raising money for publicly traded companies. And then shortly after that, I was a management consultant, specifically focusing on change management and integration strategy. So fancy words for when M&A happens. Mm-hmm. And I was predominantly working for kind of mid-sized companies, usually with angel investors. So I was working with people who were essentially buying companies and then going in as, I suppose some call it operational consultants, but it really working as a management consultant. And then I did that for 4.5 years. I had a little bit of a weird stint where I was like, oh, I need to rethink about my life. Kind of went back into family business, realized I didn't really enjoy that. And then I found myself in Toronto where I was working in ad technology as a COO for a company. That didn't work out for me because, as you can tell, I'm a bit entrepreneurial. And then I found myself really building out this business. So my background actually as a quote unquote, chief marketing officer is really not been from the traditional approach of being in marketing and trained in marketing. I was professionally trained, by a school. But, professionally speaking, a lot of my experience actually comes from working with so many different companies and really understanding how marketing works across a variety of different sizes and a variety of different industries, and just realizing there's really no one size fits all.
Right.
Marketing is an incredibly complex function. I think, if anything, probably one of the most complex functions in an organization. And I found myself always enjoying the creative side of things. And so I moved into kind of focusing my attention more into marketing and really helping companies build marketing functions, understand what marketing really means in terms of driving value for organization and, being a fractional CMO. So that's where I am today.
Got it. So let me tell you, let's go back a little bit and take me a little bit back. Like, obviously you mentioned you've been in a couple of different legs or industries, right? From marketing to financing to management, a lot of different things. Before you dived into any of that, growing up as a kid or in high school, like what was that one thing you wanted to do?
I kind of just always wanted to run a business. I remember I was saying to my mom, I was like, business is not going to go anywhere. And so that was just it. I kind of wanted to run my own business. I always wanted to do business. But, when you think about doing business, like, what does that mean? It's a really broad stroke term. I think for me, it was really just I was interested in what it took to run a business. And, as running your own business, there's a lot of different facets to running a business. The HR functions, the marketing functions, the sales functions, the operational functions, the finance function, all those things. And so, when I was in high school, I was pretty set on just like, hey, I want to really learn to understand how to run a business. And I guess my directional path to that was going into school for marketing and entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
So my program wasn't just marketing. It was really around like accounting fundamentals and finance fundamentals and strategy fundamentals, and a ton of marketing. So that was kind of my approach to getting into it. And then honestly, I'm the type of guy, it's like I like to like learn by trial by fire, man. Like I want to throw myself in there, fail hard, fail fast, and really learn. So again, untraditional approach. I wouldn't necessarily say the most welcoming for many, but certainly just the approach where it's gotten me to where I am today.
Yeah, no, definitely. Talk about that you just mentioned, fail fast, fail forward, right? And kind of learn from that. Tell me a little bit of that, because I believe that there's a lot of different lessons with just that phrase, right? The fact that in not just in business, like in life, in relationships, in anything that you do, what could be a huge takeaway from something like that? That people sometimes are afraid of that of failing, right? And really getting into something where they know they're gonna lose.
It's really surprising. Just recently in my life, someone told me you'd be surprised to look at your life and ask yourself a real honest question of how much of your life is driven by fear.
Mm.
Like how many of your day-to-day decisions are driven by fear? And it's an incredible kind of perspective and question to ask, because you'd be surprised if you were to be honest with yourself, but how much of that is actually very true. And I think one of the common states people find themselves is navigating the unknown. And, in my organization, I get this a lot from the managers we hire. They always go, what is the number one thing for success in this organization? And I always tell them, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And if you can't do that, then I don't think you're going to do really well in this company. And I think that's like the number one skill I've learned, being an entrepreneur and failing fast, failing hard. Because if you can't like navigate being uncomfortable and deal with that stress and understand some sort of framework to help you navigate your way through that, that fear is going to stop you from achieving a lot of things. And so I always tell people, you got to learn to be uncomfortable. You got to be okay with that. You can't let that anxiety, that feeling of stress and fear stop you from doing whatever you're doing. Sit back, be calm, make decisions, understand you can't control outcomes, and just continue moving forward. Like you can't be perfect every single time.
Yeah, no, definitely. I love that. And as part of that, being able to kind of face it forward, right? Face it head on, right? At the end of the day, that fear or the being uncomfortable is gonna be there, and you just gotta be able to, I guess, face it and go with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't move, if you're just constantly going to get stuck in fear and stop, you're never going to learn. You're never going to find out, what works and what doesn't. So just try it. And it's okay. We all have spotlight syndrome. We all think when we fail, like everyone's going to know, but the reality is very few people do. And if you don't tell anyone, no one will know. So,
Right.
so at the end of the day, just, try your best to navigate that and don't stop trying to get progress, and just know progress isn't going to come easy. It's just, that's an obvious thing.
Yeah. So let's talk about again, you're in this mission, right? And your mission is to deliver a marketing partnership that really has it changes the feel and the trust of just marketing in itself, right? And so before you went into that, you were working, you kind of felt like, hey, I don't want to be a fractional CMO, and I want to kind of change that and make a different impact, right? Tell me about that. Like obviously, you were doing that, you were not satisfied. What was that spark that said, you know what, I need to do something bigger and better and just kind of take this on my own?
When I was a management consultant, I remember I spent, I don't know how many weeks writing this report about what I thought was really important for the company and what was really going to drive growth for the organization. And the report sat there on the executives' desks for months. Nothing happened. And when I was a fractional CMO and I was doing fractional CMO work, I felt like the same thing was happening. And that's just unfulfilling.
Yeah.
Like it's an incredibly unfulfilling job. And so I fundamentally wanted to change the structure of the business, because if I was just going to give people a piece of paper and strategies and documents that they're never going to use, like what's the point? And so I really wanted to change that, just because I thought it was a stupid model anyways, because you hire a fractional CMO because you generally lack expertise. So if you lack expertise, why would you be the one most equipped to also hire the vendors to tactically execute on that expertise of which you've hired me to do, but you are hiring your tactical people yourself? Like, it makes really no sense. There's no alignment in that if you really think about it. And so my goal was, let's build a business where I can not only be a fractional CMO, but I can also execute on tactical activities on behalf of the strategies of which I advise on. And I thought that just makes more sense. So I did it, right? So I don't know a ton of fractional CMOs that have a team, but my team's about 25 people, and it's taken me a reasonably long time to figure out how to do that. And what I can say is it's not the easiest thing to do.
Yeah.
But I've gotten to size and I'm happy, and we've gone to the point where at least I can provide the strategy that I think is the most suiting for an organization, and I can help implement that, and actually supervise that versus handing that off to a vendor of which I have no interactions with.
Got you. For the people that are watching us or listening to us that may not know exactly what is a fractional CMO, how can you describe that?
Good question. There's a lot of archetypes, so different types of CMOs, right? You have the creative CMOs, you have operational CMOs, you have product CMOs. I think the best way to say it is, a chief marketing officer in the best viewpoint, at least in what I would consider or classify them, is it's meant to be a person who is experienced enough with marketing that can come to an organization and identify what best approach of marketing is going to generate value for that organization. And I know that sounds really broad, but when you look at marketing, marketing isn't just about the fancy creative ads, isn't just about, demand generation. It is really about building value. It's building about efficiencies. It's about amplifying revenue as a very large perspective. It's about how do you create more money and how do you drive more margin for an organization using marketing? And that's big, right? So a great example of how I think about it differently is I tell a lot of companies, it's like, what do you think marketing has to do with HR? Well, communication strategy internally and kind of culture management is a part of marketing. If you think about it, you are selling your culture to your own people. And also you need the desired outcome. And so there's actually really a function of how marketing can also increase the culture and support that culture. And if you can do that and you can decrease turnover, is that not also a way to generate profits for the organization intrinsically? And so I think that's like a very nuanced perspective where I go, marketing isn't just about what you see every day. Marketing can be used in a variety of different ways that can benefit the organization that's not in the most traditional senses.
Yeah. From your perspective, what do you, I mean, as you know, running a business, there's different legs, there's different, I would say, pillars to make a business. Which one do you feel like is the most critical one to manage, right? You have sales, you have finance, you have marketing, you have operations, right? What do you feel like is the most important one?
I think it's hard for me to say what I think is most important, because generally speaking, I think sales and marketing as pillars is not an effective approach. It's complicated. What I will simply say is, I think if you really wanted to simplify it, I'd almost want it to call it like almost like a customer pillar.
Gotcha.
Instead, just like if I were to really like put it in perspective, because sales are the ones that help push the customer to signing a contract. Marketing is the person that helps educate a customer to identify and create a need and a level of brand recognition so that when that need arises, they come to sales. And then really operations is where you're going to keep that customer. And so all that just falls under the customer, right? So, if I were, customer revenue department, like that's kind of like how I would run it. Yeah. The sales and marketing and customer success, I feel like just having those all kind of split up is sometimes silly. I do think, and look, there's no single solution to everything. So I do think looking at it on a customer revenue department perspective is far better. Sales, not so much. Marketing, not so much. Customer success, not so much. It's really that whole customer journey that I think is
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on that. I mean, as you said, I don't think there's one size fits all. And at the end of the day, I do believe, at least from my perspective too, is like if my customer is not getting the service, or it doesn't matter what kind of marketing I'm doing, if I don't have happy customers, I have no business, right? So from that perspective, you said something that was very important, and you said that, obviously, kind of moving over to this side, you feel like you were not in the previous job, right? You were not. It wasn't fulfilling enough, right? And so I think we as people, and whether it's business, whether it's our life in general, right? We want to be able to fulfill, happy, and feel like we're not empty, right? And so tell me a little bit more about that, because I do believe that a lot of times, we're facing different challenges, we're facing different things where perhaps, again, whether it's a business or a personal life, I think it applies to both of them. If you're not fulfilled, then you're not at your biggest point, right, in life, and you're not performing at that peak level. Therefore, I think that you're letting a lot of things slip by. How do you find, whether it's in business or in personal life, how do you find that fulfilling aspect that you're missing?
It's a really good question. And I have a saying where, as humans, we're really good at understanding, but until we feel, we cannot believe.
Mm.
And to explain what that means is kind of, I always tell people that I talk to, it's a little bit like when your parents say, "Oh, just trust me, you'll know." And you understand why they're saying that, and you understand the consequence or whatever they're trying to tell you, but you don't actually believe it. You don't believe it until you feel it. And
Yeah.
so I think, just unfortunately, for most people, it's, you won't really find what will make you feel fulfilled until you feel it, which means you're going to likely have to go through some things before you believe in it, or, truthfully. Personal story here is, this has probably been the worst year of my entire life. So I got divorced this year, and business was difficult, as you can imagine, with all the
Mhm.
layoffs. So it was not an easy year. And what, Cesar, well, what I would say, just like, probably the biggest thing that came out from here was, I just want to be happy.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
growing this business was great, fulfilling, probably filled up a little bit of my ego, great. But at the end of the day, I wasn't actually that happy.
Right.
And I realized what makes me happy is just working with clients I actually really like, versus trying to make the business grow. Because
Mhm.
when driving the business up, I'm working with some clients that I don't really enjoy. And I just realized, like, why am I doing that to myself?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what's the benefit to go on this podcast and be like, look at me, I run a big 25, 30 person agency and blah, blah, blah. Look at me, but I'm a miserable person.
Yeah.
It's just, like, so I think, the unfortunately, I think the key to fulfillment is, you do unfortunately have to go through some experiences to feel that level of fulfillment, and for you to come to that realization before you believe in it. It's very easy for me to say that you should always seek happiness, but it's taken me till 35 now this year, for me to really believe in it. Like, I really genuinely believe that all I care about is, I just want to be happy. So I'll take a discount. I'll take a salary haircut. I
Yeah.
want to be happy.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that, and I also realized that late in my years, through my own journey too. And so one of the things that I talk to people when I'm in my podcast now is, at least from my perspective, here's what I believe, right? I believe that if you're working for profits, you're doing it wrong. You got to be working for purpose, and the profits will come. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes, I know for me, when I decided to leave my 9 to 5 and jump into becoming a full-time entrepreneur, real estate investor, all I was looking at is, how can I make more money? How can I make more money? Right? How can I get that money? I was working for profits. Where in the middle of that, I ended a 10-year relationship. In the middle of that, I let myself go. Like, there were so many things, right? So many different elements when we talk about that, where you kind of let that go. And then I kind of changed the dynamics and the way of thinking. And I said, what about if I start working for a purpose? Like, what is that purpose that I have? What is that fulfilling aspect? How can I be happy? Whatever that might be for you, for everybody, it's different, right? But what is that one thing? And for me, I realized that I wanted to empower, motivate, and help as many people as I can through either my books, through my real estate, through my coaching, whatever that might be, right? At whatever price point. And then I realized when I did that, not only did I feel like the universe was aligning with me, and I started seeing different types of results, and I started seeing different opportunities where again the profits came after the fact, right? And so I do believe that a lot of people that, at least again from my perspective, is that when they jump into being entrepreneurs, they sometimes jump in for the wrong reasons, and money is good for sure because it can solve many problems, many challenges. At the same time, that can end very easily if you don't have a purpose, a why, a fulfilling aspect backing that up, in that sense. So I myself went through that, and I can kind of see that,
Yeah, and I think everyone does sooner or later. I
right?
think I could be wrong.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, talk about your clients. Like, how do you go about finding your clients, or how do people connect with you and find you?
Honestly, and we're kind of a great example of a business who is so busy working in the business and we don't work on the business. And the reason I say that is because I think 99% of my business comes from word of mouth and referrals.
Yep.
And honestly, that has gotten us to where we need to be. And part of that is also because it's also just because our sales are like our actual service isn't fully productized, and so it's a complex sales process.
Gotcha.
And I'm changing that next year, but fundamentally it is mostly a referral process, and we tend to keep it that way. So a lot of it's in person. The other thing also is, truthfully, I'm just so tired of trying to convince people. If I have to convince someone that they need marketing, it's kind of honestly a waste of time.
Right.
More often than not, a CEO who needs to be convinced isn't actually going to give us the authority or independence required for us to do a good job anyway. So unfortunately for me, well, I guess fortunate or unfortunate, it's been mostly referrals. And I do plan to change that next year, but as of right now, for the last 6.5 years, that's how we've grown.
Got you. And are your clients either they're small business, mid-size? What kind of businesses you work with?
Majority of our clients, I'm going to say, are on the lower end of mid-size. So talk about more than 5 to 8 million in revenue typically. We do work with smaller size businesses, but that's typically because they're VC backed or they're private, or usually VC backed or angel investor backed, and usually the VC or the angel knows us and so refers us to them to help do some initial kind of marketing work and diligence. And then we work with private equity, and typically when we're working with private equity, the companies are of some decent size, usually $50 million in revenue or more.
Got you. Now, for my personal side, and I think this also applies to your business, have you done any kind of work on really working on yourself in terms of like putting yourself in a different state of mind? Because obviously you've been doing this for quite some time. Your business has been successful. Definitely, there's other things that might be lacking, and you're working on. Definitely, that's part of life, right? Except again, I also believe that we as entrepreneurs have different habits. Tony Robbins refers to them as rituals, right? We have different habits that can help us in our business or our personal life. Do you have any kind of habits or rituals that you do on a day-to-day basis?
Not right now. I will say I'm in a state of bit disorganization, frankly speaking.
Yep.
I go in and out of habits, and typically some of the best habits I've had are good examples. Like every Sunday, I used to spend an hour or two exploring new SaaS tools, and I would make that a ritual. The reason is because there's always a SaaS tool that can help your business in some form or manner. A good example of that is I probably recommend everyone do that for it, just generative AI every weekend, just because how fundamentally impactful generative AI is to your business is quite big. And I would argue that almost every business, no matter the category, likely can find value from that. So you'd be kind of silly to not pay attention to that. Other things is basic project management, task management stuff. Identifying your first 3 goals, the 3 tasks you want to accomplish for the day, and just making sure you're moving forward with those things. Kind of just moving towards your North Star.
Okay, I love that. And so, what's your contact information for people to your website or contact information so people can get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram at fya.marketingbytes, and that's with a Y. Or you can go on our website, which is www.findyouraudience.online. And then we have a discovery call kind of button on the top right. And of course, you can just find me on LinkedIn. So you can find me at LinkedIn. My name is Nathan Yeung, spelled Yeung, and happy to connect there.
Awesome. My last question for you, Nathan, is for the people that are watching us that might be going through some challenge, whatever challenge that might be. What is one thing you can say to them so they can start overcoming that challenge?
Nothing comes easy, and only the things that are valuable to you come with investment. And I'll give this as a great example because I'm 100% sure anyone listening that's single and you've been in the dating pool, dating apps suck. and a lot of people talk about how it sucks, but no one really has a theory. Here's my theory. Dating apps lower the substitution cost for every single person to invest into a relationship. So no one invests. But the sad part is, though, only the best relationships, they always come with investment. So because the substitution cost is so low, no one wants to invest into it. So you never get the good parts. So if there's one thing I'm going to say is that same theory is life. If you aren't willing to sacrifice, if you aren't willing to invest, you can't always expect there to be value or the best parts of whatever you're doing. So learn to invest, learn to be uncomfortable. And I think you'll see the outcomes come your way. Sometimes that's obviously challenging.
Yeah, no, definitely. I love that. Well, Nathan, again, thank you for being here. Really appreciate having you on the show, and definitely all the insight that you gave us. Anything else you want to say before I let you go?
No, I'm good.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you again for being here. And for the rest of you guys, do me a favor. Please make sure that you share this podcast because definitely somebody here needs to hear this message. And I'll see you guys in the next episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.